Leo, radiant soul of the Zodiac. There's no gentle way to say this, so let me be clear from the start. Something or someone is about to leave your life. And no matter how tightly you've held on, this goodbye is inevitable. But here's the truth no one may have told you yet: this isn't just an ending. It's the sacred unraveling of an old version of you so that something bigger, brighter, and more aligned with your divine path can take root. Right now, you may feel it deep in your chest. That pull. That tension between holding on and letting go. Maybe you've noticed how certain people feel distant lately. How old roles no longer fit. How the throne you once sat on now feels strangely uncomfortable. That's not random. That's not failure. That's your soul whispering, you've outgrown this. It's time. You didn't come here by accident. Something in your energy called you to this message because a deeper part of you already knows a shift is coming. A door is closing. And you need to be ready. Welcome to Eternal Mindfulness. Here, we don't just decode the stars. We guide souls through the sacred in-between. The space between what was and what is yet to be. This isn't just a horoscope. This is your mirror, your map, and your moment of awakening. So let me ask you this, Leo. If you knew that releasing this attachment would set your soul free, would you finally let go? Would you stop fighting the tide and start walking the shoreline of your next chapter? You are not being punished. You are being invited to evolve, to reclaim your fire, and to remember that loss is never loss when it returns you to yourself. Think of the crown you wear. It was never meant to weigh you down. It was meant to reflect your light. And sometimes, in order to shine again, you must place it down just long enough to remember who you are beneath it. I want you to take a deep breath and ask yourself, what in your life feels like it's fading? What chapter feels like it's complete, even if you're afraid to admit it? Now comment below. I'm ready to release what no longer serves me. That phrase doesn't just mark your intention. It activates your alignment. It tells the universe you're not hiding anymore. And if you've been holding pain behind your pride, pretending to be fine when you're actually breaking inside, this is your moment to be real. To be brave. To begin again. Let me pause here to say this from my heart to yours. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself in this moment of truth. Every like, every share, every subscription expands this space and helps this soul-led community grow. Your presence here isn't just seen, it's deeply felt. You're not alone in this goodbye. You're not lost. You're in transition. And transitions are sacred. So stay with me. Because by the time we reach the end of this video, something inside you will shift. A truth will be named. And your next step, no matter how hard, will feel divinely guided. Let's begin. Leo, you may have always seen yourself as strong, unshakable, like a mountain rising high above the chaos of the world. But even mountains tremble. Even the most solid ground can hold a hidden fire beneath its surface, quietly building pressure over years, even lifetimes, until one day, the fault line gives way and something ancient begins to shift. That's where you are now, not in danger, but in motion. Not breaking down, but breaking open. And though the world around you may not see it, you can feel the subtle quakes happening deep within. Astrologically, the influence of Uranus and Saturn in this moment is significant. Uranus is the liberator, the unexpected visitor that disrupts routine and reveals the fractures in our carefully built structures. Saturn, on the other hand, is the wise guardian of time and boundaries. When these two celestial forces interact, they don't just shake your external world, they test the internal foundations of your identity. They ask you to look closely at what you've built your life upon. Are your values still true? Are your loyalties still rooted in love or simply in habit? Are you holding on because something serves your soul, or because it once did and you haven't yet dared to question it? This energetic shakeup can feel disorienting, but it is never without purpose. In truth, it is the beginning of a deeper alignment. The Tower appears in the tarot when what was once held sacred must be dismantled. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. And paired with strength, it speaks to your courage to stand in the storm, not to control it, but to withstand it with grace. The lion in you may roar, may resist, but at your core lies a quiet strength rooted in your ability to surrender with dignity when it's time to let go. Sometimes the people, roles, or dreams we thought would last forever were never meant to stay. They were bridges, not destinations. Carriers of a lesson, a mirror, or a reminder of who we once were. When life gently or abruptly removes them, the ego may perceive loss, but the heart, if quiet enough, will recognize the space that's being made for something more truthful. There's a kind of fire that doesn't bend, it refines. Just as heat tempers steel, the emotional intensity of this phase is refining you. It's clarifying what really matters. It's asking you to release the noise and return to what is essential. And yes, it may be painful. But pain, when witnessed and allowed to breathe, becomes the very passage through which wisdom enters. Like the still water that only reflects the sky once the storm has passed, your inner clarity will return, not in spite of the quake, but because of it. In traditions that teach presence, there is a profound insight that suffering ends not when circumstances change, but when resistance softens. What you resist, persists. What you observe without clinging begins to dissolve. That is the art of this moment, neither denying the shake nor identifying with it, but simply witnessing it as a sacred movement of life realigning you. So, Leo, I ask you now, what are you holding on to that no longer fits the shape of your becoming? What truths have been knocking softly at the door of your awareness, waiting for you to pause long enough to let them in? You were never meant to stay the same. The mountain is not less magnificent because it erupts, it becomes a landscape reformed by fire, and from that ash, something new, something wild, and something wholly alive begins to grow. Sometimes, the hardest part of transformation isn't the change itself, it's the quiet farewell we're asked to offer to the things, people, or identities that once felt like home. But Leo, what if this goodbye isn't a loss, but a doorway? What if, instead of being pulled away from something safe, you're being returned to something real, something that's been waiting inside you all along? This moment in your life carries the energy of sacred release. Not a dramatic severing, but an inner recognition that something has already finished serving its purpose. A relationship where the love has turned into obligation. A job that once brought passion, now slowly draining your vitality. Or perhaps, it's subtler, the gentle crumbling of a version of yourself who once survived, coped, succeeded, but no longer feels alive. In astrology, we often look to the death card in tarot not as an omen, but as a promise that endings are not punishments, they are invitations. The star always follows death in the cycle of awakening. And that's not symbolic coincidence. That is a rhythm encoded into the natural flow of your evolution. One door closes, and if your eyes are clear, you will see that the night sky above is full of new constellations waiting to be navigated. This isn't about forgetting what once mattered. Quite the opposite. It's about honoring what has shaped you, then gently releasing your grip so it doesn't keep shaping who you're becoming. Imagine an actor finishing a role in a long-running play. There's a tenderness to the closing curtain. A part of you wants to stay. But the role no longer reflects the growth of the soul that now wears the costume. The story is complete. The performance, lived. What remains is gratitude, not regret. Here's where the energy of Leo meets the truth of impermanence. For all your strength, pride, and radiant expression, there's also a deeper wisdom within you, the knowing that true power doesn't cling, it flows. What defines a star is not its resistance, but its ability to burn through layers of itself, shedding what no longer fuels its light. That's what this moment is asking of you. To let something fall away so you can shine more honestly, more fully, more freely. There is a quiet practice in certain wisdom traditions. When something ends, write a letter. Not for closure in the usual sense, but to name the gratitude. To witness the pain without attaching to it. To offer love to the version of yourself who once needed that person, that path, that mask. Then, with intention, to set that letter free, bury it, burn it, float it in water. Because ritual, no matter how simple, creates an anchor for the soul to rise from. And still, the question remains, if you must say goodbye, will you do it with resistance or with reverence? Will you allow this moment to be an act of mourning or an act of liberation? Remember, nothing you've loved is wasted. The lessons live on. The joy, the pain, the growth, it all shaped you into someone brave enough to choose truth over comfort. That is a quiet kind of heroism. One that doesn't make noise, but makes space. For healing. For reinvention. For joy that doesn't come from what you hold but from who you've become by letting go. So ask yourself, what am I ready to release, not out of defeat, but out of devotion to the self I'm becoming? And when you're ready, write the first word of that goodbye. Not to end something, but to begin again. When life begins to whisper in symbols instead of sentences, you know something deeper is unfolding. Patterns emerge where before there was only coincidence. A certain number appears again and again on clocks, receipts, license plates, perhaps 555 or 1111. A song plays in the background and strikes a chord you didn't realize was waiting to be touched. Someone from your past resurfaces at the very moment you're questioning a connection. Or you have a dream, vivid, strange, repeating, and it lingers in your chest longer than your mind can explain. These are not just moments. They're messages. Leo, you are entering a space where the universe no longer communicates through logic alone. It's speaking to your intuition, no fluidly, symbolically, with timing too precise to be accidental. And it's inviting you to see what's no longer aligned, not through external force, but through inner awareness. These synchronicities are not meant to scare you. They are checkpoints. Confirmations that your inner compass is already active, already guiding you out of the familiar and into the truth. The High Priestess in Tarot embodies this knowing. She doesn't shout. She waits. watches. Here's the signal behind the noise. And when she's paired with judgment, something profound happens. Not only do you sense what's coming, you recognize what must be evaluated and released. This is the call to discernment. It is not about reacting to signs like a puzzle to be solved. It's about slowing down enough to feel which ones are meant for you. And that requires courage. Because once you see the signs, you can no longer unsee them. Perhaps the job that used to feel like purpose now feels like a cage. Perhaps a relationship you clung to in the name of loyalty is echoing with silence. Or maybe you're realizing that the version of yourself you're projecting to the world is no longer honest. These signs, the unease, the restlessness, the sudden clarity, they aren't disruptions. They're invitations. They're the universe gently nudging you to ask, have I mistaken what's familiar for what's true? Sometimes clarity doesn't come all at once. It trickles in through small cues, nudges, glances. It visits you in still moments and unsettled nights. In traditions of mindfulness, there's a lesson about right timing. Not everything blooms when you want it to. But everything ripens when you are ready to receive it. That's what these signs are, regular reminders that the soil is shifting beneath your roots because the harvest is near. But you cannot reap what is waiting until you stop watering what is wilting. If you've seen recurring numbers, strange dreams, or an unshakable sense that something is changing, take notice. Don't brush it off. Begin a ritual of reflection. Write down the patterns. Track how you feel when they arrive. Observe what's present in your life in those moments. Slowly, a thread will reveal itself and it will lead you toward what needs to be faced, honored, and possibly released. The invitation now is simple but profound. Update your internal map. Revisit the values you once held so tightly. Are they still yours, or have they been inherited from a version of you who no longer speaks? What you once called stability might now be a gentle prison. What you once called love might now be attachment. And none of that makes you wrong. It just makes you ready for clarity, for choice, for truth. So I ask you, Leo, what signs have been following you? What numbers, names, sensations, or moments have caught your attention more than once? Share them below. Let others witness your turning point. Sometimes, all we need is confirmation that we're not imagining things. That what we're feeling is real. That our inner guidance is not broken, it's just awakening. When a season of transformation reaches its most honest moment, it often begins to touch every layer of your being quietly at first, then unmistakably. What starts as emotional tension in the heart gradually seeps into the body, into your work, into your relationships. It's not chaos. It's clarity knocking at every door of your life at once, asking, are you still living in alignment, or are you surviving in a version of yourself that no longer breathes? Leo, you're a sign that burns bright with vision, passion, and vitality. But even fire can dim when it's locked in a space with no air. What you're feeling now may not be weakness, it may be a sign that your energy, your purpose, your spirit, and your physical form are all craving the same thing: renewal. A full-bodied shedding. A quiet revolution that doesn't come with explosions, but with the brave decision to listen inward and respond outward. Your body, for instance, holds the first and last word in every emotional chapter. If you've been waking up tired, feeling tension in your shoulders or chest, struggling to fall asleep despite physical exhaustion. These are signals. Not symptoms to be feared, but messages to be honored. Repressed emotions don't disappear, they settle into the body like unprocessed memories. This is why breathwork, stretching, hydration, and conscious movement aren't luxuries during this phase. They are necessary rituals of return. When you make space in the body, you make space in the soul. In the realm of career, the discomfort you felt around your work is more than professional dissatisfaction. It's the sound of your inner voice growing louder than the roles you've played. You may be showing up every day to something that feels safe, but does it truly reflect your essence? Or have you been exchanging authenticity for predictability? There's a powerful reflection here, that false security always costs more than it appears to. And the question isn't whether you should leap, but whether you can keep living on a ledge that's already begun to crumble beneath you. In your relationships, too, the same pattern may be revealing itself. Conversations that once flowed now feel forced. Affection once shared has turned to silence. The connection isn't necessarily broken, but it may be complete. It takes courage to see the difference between something that needs healing and something that has already served its purpose. Parting ways isn't always a failure. Sometimes, it's the highest form of libido. Release someone, or yourself, from a bond that's lost its honesty. The Hermit and Ace of Wands together in tarot offer a clear image here. The Hermit invites solitude not as punishment, but as a sacred pause. A time to remember what your light feels like when it's not diluted by noise or expectation. From that silence, the Ace of Wands emerges a new spark, a fresh path, a deeper desire that rises not from reaction, but from realignment. Only when you sit with your inner truth long enough does the right next step become undeniable. So give yourself 3 nights. 3 gentle evenings to return to yourself. No phones, no outside voices, just a notebook, or a slow walk, or a candlelit moment of reflection. Ask, not what needs fixing, but what needs freeing. Ask, not who has let you down, but where you've abandoned your own needs. In these spaces of quiet, renewal begins. You don't have to overhaul your entire life in a single gesture. You only need to respond honestly to what your body, your work, your relationships, and your breath have been whispering all along. It's time. Not to become someone new, but to remove everything that has kept the real you hidden. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when everything you've learned, released, faced, and healed gently gathers at your feet, waiting for your next move. You can feel it. Like standing at a familiar crossroad, where the past calls softly behind you and the unknown hums ahead like distant sunlight breaking through fog. This is not a moment for logic or even clarity. It's a moment for courage. And for Leo, whose spirit is symbolized by the sun itself, the question is not whether you'll shine, but whether you'll allow yourself to stop dimming for places, people, or identities that no longer reflect your light. The Sun and the 2 of Wands in tarot illustrate this pivotal intersection. The Sun is radiant truth, undeniable, nourishing, vibrant. It asks nothing from you but presence and permission to rise. The 2 of Wands, meanwhile, is the moment of vision, of possibility, where you hold the world in your hand, but still must choose to step out of the known and into your power. Together, these energies suggest not a fork in the road, but a threshold of becoming. One path leads back to comfort, repetition, safety laced with quiet unrest. The other path? It leads forward, into the luminous terrain of your next self. And yet, here's what no one tells you about this part. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes, it's as subtle as a breath held too long, a conversation avoided, a truth whispered quietly to yourself, then ignored. The choice to stay in the past doesn't always come with thunder. It arrives with habits, with compromises that slowly dim the fire you fought so hard to keep alive. Which is why now, more than ever, you must listen not just with your ears but with your entire being. What feels alive when you think about your future? And what contracts in your body when you imagine staying where you are? In certain ancient teachings, there's a reminder that suffering is not just pain, it is the resistance to change. When we fear the unknown, we cling to what is familiar, even when it hurts us. But when we begin to walk toward the unknown with trust, not blind faith, but embodied knowing, we begin to experience a different kind of strength. One that does not come from control, but from surrender. From the willingness to meet what is real, even if it's unfamiliar. From the honesty to say, I want to live in alignment, even if that means walking alone for a while. Leo, this is your sun moment. Not because someone else has crowned you worthy, but because you've outgrown the shadow you once hid in. The past served its purpose, seat brought you here. But the future doesn't begin with circumstance. It begins with choice. And that choice lives within you now. Will you turn back, or will you step forward, not because you're fearless, but because you are ready to live a life that reflects the truth of who you've become? Ask yourself, what would it feel like to no longer apologize for your light? To no longer shrink in rooms that don't recognize your worth? To no longer tolerate dynamics that keep you doubting your voice? That is what awaits when you say the brave yes to your own becoming. And when you do, the universe moves in rhythm with your decision. Doors open. The right people appear. The next path reveals itself, not all at once, but one golden step at a time. You were never meant to stay small. Not in love, not in purpose, not in truth. The question now is simple. Will you keep tending the ashes of what's ending, or will you walk into the fire of your becoming, and finally rise? And so, dear Leo, if you've followed this fair, if you've sat with the stirring questions, felt the subtle tremors in your chest, and allowed yourself to consider the possibility that this chapter is reaching its sacred close, then you already know, this goodbye isn't just something happening to you. It's something your soul chose long before your mind caught up. A release, not a rejection. A shift, not a loss. It may have arrived wrapped in discomfort, cloaked in confusion, but at its core, this is an act of grace. Because every ending that calls you forward is also a beginning disguised as silence, asking you gently, are you ready to become who you were always meant to be? It's okay to mourn the comfort of the familiar. It's okay if the tears come without a clear reason. Let them. You are not weak because you feel deeply. You are strong because you dare to feel it all and still choose to move forward. Remember, the heart is not meant to be armored, it's meant to be open. And in that openness, healing begins. You don't need to have it all figured out to take the first step. You only need to trust that life, when lived honestly, will always guide you to the next aligned moment. If you haven't yet, take a few minutes tonight to sit in stillness. Write down what you are releasing. Speak it aloud if you need to. Whisper it if it feels too raw. But name it. Let your soul know that you are no longer pretending you're okay with carrying something that no longer fits the shape of your future. Whether it's a job, a relationship, a role you've played for too long, or a belief that once protected you but now imprisons you, release it, with gratitude. Because letting go isn't abandoning, it's honoring. It's acknowledging that something has served its purpose, and now, you're ready to walk on without dragging it behind you. This is your invitation to stand tall in your own becoming. To choose love over fear. Alignment over comfort. Truth over illusion. The door is open, Leo. The light is pouring in. All that's left is for you to say yes to your next self, your next season, your next brave act of authenticity. So I'll ask you now, what are you saying goodbye to? And what do you feel rising in its place? If you feel called, share your reflection in the comments. Not only will you anchor it in your own journey, but your words might light the way for someone else standing at their own crossroads. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me, for showing up for your growth, your clarity, and your healing. Every like, every comment, and every subscription you offer helps expand this shared space of transformation. It allows the energy of eternal mindfulness to continue guiding souls like yours home to themselves. And for that, from the depth of my heart, I thank you. If this video touched something in you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next message designed for your evolution. Because the universe isn't done speaking yet and your journey is far from over. After all, when a star collapses, it doesn't disappear. It becomes a supernova explosion of brilliance that births new galaxies. Maybe that's what's happening in you now. Maybe what you thought was the end is the beginning of your most luminous light yet.